How's your sphere look?
My sphere's looking good, and it's getting better every day.
Is it really?
Yeah.
All right, so everybody's aging in your sphere, but the attractiveness of them.
The attractiveness level of the group as a whole, it's like the sum of all parts is better than the what's that saying? I don't know that saying, but the saying was like the sum is better than the individual parts.
I feel like this video is off to a terrible start, but now maybe you watched our last video, maybe you heard us talk a little bit about your sphere of influence, right? And how if you're a new agent, you gotta build that. You gotta have a sphere, right? If you're an existing agent, 12 years in the business, almost 15 years in the business, you probably need to do a little maintenance on that every once in a while. So let's go ahead and assume the maintenance is done. The maintenance on your sphere is done. Mine's still a mess. What are you doing with it, Kevin? Like, after I have that list, what are my expectations? Like, what's next?
Well, first of all, the expectations is how am I? I guess there's two pieces to this for me, right?
Okay.
There's the what am I gonna do with it, right? How am I communicating with this list, this group of people that I have a relationship with already? So how am I building those relationships deeper, stronger, better? And how am I bringing more business from that? Mm-hmm. And then the part 2 or 1A of that is how am I growing that group? Mm-hmm. Because I got to be honest, like my group is okay, list size wise, but I need it to be bigger to hit my goals.
Yeah.
And so now it's about how do I add people to that, but add people so that way it fits in, it's the right person. And for me, when I think of your sphere, it's they'll take my phone call. If I run into them at the grocery store, we chit chat, at least say hello, how's it going, catch up. That's a sphere. Not like, hey, I know them or we're just Facebook friends. That's not my sphere of influence. And so the thought is, how do I extract from that what I want for my business and provide by providing value? And then number 2 is how do I make it bigger so that business gets bigger?
Right. So let's talk about 2 things. I would like to talk about categorization as well, but I'd also like to talk about the fact that you mentioned it in our last video briefly. Yes, I want my sphere to get bigger, but like, is there a number that's too big, or is there a number that's too small? Like, what's a reasonable size sphere of influence if somebody's watching that's never done this before?
Well, so I don't know that I'm the expert on this, but I've interviewed the experts, right?
Okay.
And so I'm going to go to, I think of a buddy of mine named Roger. He sells real estate here in the Scottsdale area. Okay. And I think of Dean Jackson, who's just a marketing expert specifically in real estate, but in all sorts of industries as well. And Dean is really great on referrals of all sorts. Mm-hmm. And so he also teaches a lot of real estate agents, and he's found that with 150 people in your sphere of influence, if you're properly communicating to them yearly, that should equate to about 30 transactions a year, right?
Yeah.
So there's a return on relationship is what he likes to call it. 20% is like the gold standard, and that's, to me, that's what I'm going after, is the gold standard.
Okay,
so
20% return.
So 20% return is what I'm looking for, is my return on relationship goal. And so if I've got 150 people, that's the 30 transactions. Now, if I had, let's say, 300 people, that should theoretically be 60 transactions.
Yeah.
And I don't see why it couldn't be. If you're following a sphere plan, I think of the categorization that you just referenced. I think of some of the different things you can do that are both automated and both more personal. And when you add those things together, I don't see why you can't have a 20% return on relationship.
Size may be everything, size may not be everything when it comes to sphere of influence, Kevin, right? And what I mean by that is, like, I actually think there are people that work a 50, 75, 100 person sphere that work it so good, and those people are so close to them, they've been in the business a while, they have dinner and lunch with those people, like, they're just, like, they're almost all A-listers, if we could call it that, right? To where they actually can get north of 20%, on that.
Oh,
because
there's no
not
doubt.
that all those people are gonna, 20% are gonna buy or sell every year, but those are like advocates on their behalf that are constantly sending them business. But there's also something to be said, you could have too big of a sphere where now you're actually struggling to execute on any sort of plan where you're staying in front of those people, right? So I'm not saying you shouldn't have 300 people in your sphere of influence, but if you suck right now communicating with 50 or 100, you might want to get better at like sort of what you're doing, the activities you're taking towards that sphere, rather than just trying to build the biggest list possible.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like,
no, I think
there's a balance in there somewhere.
There is absolutely balance, and I think that for some of us, we may be at a place where we need to focus on the growth and the size of it because we've got that rhythm down to how we're communicating with it. And for others of us, we may need to focus on getting that rhythm down and how we communicate with it, right? So that way we can extract whatever it is that there's there, then we can worry about adding to it.
Yeah, and I'll end this video by saying this. I think categorization is important. I think I've failed in this area, and this is what's given me a lack of clarity, which caused me to not communicate with my sphere as often as I should have. I think it's important to go through and simply categorize your sphere of influence. Put an A, B, or C next to the people on your list. Decide what everybody gets. C's get everything, right? Your monthly newsletter, your Facebook advertisement, whatever else. B's get a little bit more than C's, right? They're people you're trying to probably move closer to you, or you're trying to decide if they need to go down. You're moving them up or down, right?
Right.
And then A's are people that you're absolutely getting contact sport with. Like there's a lot of face-to-face interaction with those type of people. So I think the categorization is important, and it's what I failed at, which has had me sort of had lack of clarity over the last 15 years of my career on who I should spend my time with to get the return I need out of my sphere of influence. So I think categorization is also a great way to sort of get started. Maybe a future video will give some different ideas on different sphere of influence strategies to actually bring value to your sphere and stay in touch with them so that you can get that 20% return.
Why not? What the heck?
Why not?
See ya.